In this video, I'd like to share my core philosophy on how disease occurs and what our bodies absolutely require to not only get healthy, but stay healthy long term. So this philosophy is something that's evolved for me over a number of years. It was years of working with patients, years of classes, seminars, books, all kinds of things. And then I also had the good fortune to work with a couple of very innovative mentors who helped me to dramatically change how I practice. They shared some things that I took into the clinic with me, and when I did, it made a world of difference. I was able to have much quicker results with my patients and longer lasting results with my patients. So when that happened, I decided to really dig in and understand more about this information. So the concept is this: to overcome disease and stay healthy, we need the capacity to create properly functioning new cells. And for that to happen, we need two things. We need voltage and we need nutrients. So I know that sounds deceptively simple, so let's unpack this a little bit. First of all, let's recognize that our bodies are meant to heal. Anybody who's ever had a scraped knee or a scraped elbow or a broken bone, you've gone through this. And this happens throughout the whole body. Our skin takes about 4 weeks to heal. The lining of the stomach is replaced every 3 days. The liver is replaced every 6 weeks, the nervous system every 9 months. And this happens on a cell by cell by cell basis. So the other thing to recognize is that our bodies are electric. And I know we hear a lot about how our bodies need the right chemicals and hormones to function properly. And while that's true, our bodies are also electric. And we know this because we use EKGs, right? Electrocardiograms to detect the electrical signals from our heart to assess heart health, and EEG, electroencephalograms, to assess the electrical output of our brains in our brainwave patterns. So our bodies clearly have an electrical component. Now, when we lose the ability to make properly functioning new cells, that's when disease processes and pain set in. So the cells in our bodies need negative 25 millivolts to function correctly. But when cells are old and worn out or they're damaged, then we need double that, or 50 millivolts, to create new cells. Okay, so as you can see in the chart, negative 25 millivolts and negative 50 millivolts fall into the neutral to slightly alkaline range on the pH scale. And as our cells lose their voltage, the cell environment becomes more acidic. So as our cells go from like negative 25 millivolts to negative 15 to negative 10, kind of down the left-hand side here, you become more tired and more susceptible to getting sick. When your cells flip their polarity and go into a positive charge, that's when more serious disease processes start to take hold, like viral infections, bacterial infections, fungal infections, and then ultimately mutations or cancer. And I'm sure this all sounds pretty theoretical at this point, so let's look at what happens with live cells. So let me move on to the next slide here. Okay, so in this slide, this is an image of live red and white blood cells viewed under a dark field microscope. The round cells that are a little darker are red blood cells, and the brighter round shapes there, there's only one, is a white blood cell. So you'll notice that the red blood cells are kind of stuck together. They really shouldn't be like this. The outside of a red blood cell is negatively charged, and when it has enough charge, it should repel its neighboring red blood cells, right? So they should kind of make space for each other. This negative charge is called zeta potential, and when our voltage is low, the zeta potential is low, and the red blood cells start to stick together and create clumps. Now I'm going to show you another slide here. So the lower the voltage, the worse the rouleau. So rouleau is what happens when the voltage goes really low, the zeta potential goes really low, and then the red blood cells stick together in more clumpy kind of ways like you see on the right-hand side, and they start to stack up and look like coins. So as you can imagine, the more clumping, the more likely we are to have clotting inside the blood vessels. And that's not a good situation. In fact, in Chinese medicine, one of the primary reasons for sharp stabbing pain is what we call blood stasis. And it means blood not moving freely the way that it should, and that blockage is what causes the pain. So the other thing that I want to point out is the white blood cell on the left. It's kind of round and not very bright. White blood cells are our immune cells, and they should have an irregular shape to them because they should be moving around, reaching out their arms, and surrounding the pathogens in our bloodstream and digesting them. Now, let me bring up another slide here. Okay, so by comparison, look at the new image on the right. So these are blood cells after a microcurrent acupuncture treatment, which increases the voltage in the blood. So first, you'll notice the red blood cells have a bright red, or not red, but just a bright ring around them because their voltage is higher. Their zeta potential is higher, and they have significantly less clumping. So as you can imagine, these cells can much more freely flow through the blood vessels, even to the smaller vessels, right? Like in our fingers and our toes, without creating unhealthy clots or pain. And just in case you're wondering, if you're thinking that, hey, does this make my blood too thin? It doesn't. The microcurrent actually only returns your blood function to a normal state. It does not change the clotting cascade factors. So you'll still clot normally after a cut or a surgical procedure. So the other thing I want to point out here is the white blood cell on the right. You'll notice it's quite a bit brighter, and again, it has more voltage. It also has an irregular shape, and that's because it's able to, reach out and swallow up those pathogens and, function the way that it should to keep our blood clean and healthy. So we use specific acupuncture points along with a specific microcurrent frequency to help your body have the voltage that you need for cells to function correctly and to be able to create healthy new replacement cells. So hopefully this helps you see what actually happens to our cells when we have low voltage versus when we have a more appropriate higher voltage, so everything can function correctly. And while this example is with red blood cells, you can imagine the same scenario happening with any cell in your body. Okay, so now let's take a look at the other required component to make new cells, and that's nutrients. So first of all, we need to have all the nutrients necessary for our cells to work and to create new cells. So for instance, your thyroid needs iodine, selenium, zinc, iron, and vitamin B1. For proper adrenal function, we need vitamin C, zinc, and biotin. So it's like making a cake. You need to have all the ingredients at the same time. So if you only had eggs and butter, that wouldn't result in a cake. Same thing with regard to our cellular function. We need to have all of the nutrients, vitamins, minerals, amino acids for our cells to do the things that they need to do. Now, on top of having all the right core nutrients available, we also need to have a completely functioning digestive system to break down those nutrients so that they're usable inside of our bodies. Our stomach needs strong stomach acid, like a pH of 2, to be able to break down the proteins in the foods that we eat, break them down into amino acids, so that our small intestine can actually use those resources. What often happens, though, is that we don't have strong enough acid to do the job, and partially digested proteins are passed along to the small intestine, and then those get into our bloodstream, and that causes problems. So here we have another live blood sample viewed under a dark field microscope, just like before. And you'll remember from our earlier pictures that red blood cells are supposed to be round. But as you see here, many of these are teardrop shaped. And that's because those partially digested proteins we were just talking about, they got passed through the lining of the small intestine and went into the bloodstream. And now they're stuck to the walls of the red blood cells. The immune system sees these partially digested proteins as invaders, just like a virus, just like you have the flu. And your body starts making antibodies to attack these foreign proteins for the next time that they show up. So that means every time you eat that same food, your body now has antibodies ready to attack it, and that's how we end up having allergic reactions to the food we eat. And it's all because we didn't have enough stomach acid to properly break down our food in the first place. This is one of the problems that happens with long-term use of proton pump inhibitors like Prilosec or omeprazole. They keep your stomach acid low, so a lot of the food that you eat doesn't get digested properly, and those partially digested proteins end up in your bloodstream. So your immune system is in a constant state of attack every time you eat. Now, this ultimately lowers your voltage too, because your immune system doesn't get any rest. It's just like having an eternal cold that you never get over. In fact, some people actually have cold and flu symptoms after eating. And they sneeze, they get a runny nose, itchy eyes, swelling in the body, the heart rate can even increase. So when your immune system is constantly working to rid yourself of those partially digested protein invaders, I'll call them, you literally start to feel tired, especially after you eat. And in Chinese medicine, one of the key symptoms of a digestive problem is feeling tired after you eat. That's called postprandial fatigue. So in review, our bodies need both voltage and nutrients to be capable of making healthy new cells to replace old ones or damaged ones. And while I can provide microcurrent acupuncture treatments to give your body more voltage, and we can discuss the various ways to give you the whole spectrum of nutrients that your body needs, there are also a few things that can drain away those resources and put you right back into a disease state. And I call those things energy leaks. And they're things like low thyroid function, poor digestive function, which we've kind of talked about already, toxins, scars, dental infections. That's not a total list, but that gives you an idea of the kinds of things that we look for. And while it's too much to go through the detail of all of the energy leaks right now, let me give you a couple of examples of common things that I see in the clinic. So let's take low thyroid function. The reason thyroid function is so important is because our thyroid hormones control the voltage of the mitochondria in our cells. So if you go back to 8th grade biology, so cells have all those different components inside of them. Mitochondria are like the batteries of our cells. So if it's a muscle cell, the mitochondria give the muscle cell the ability to contract. If it's a nerve cell, the mitochondria give the cell the ability to send and receive nerve impulses. So if those batteries are low and don't have a full charge, it's like having a flashlight with half-dead batteries. The light isn't very bright, it doesn't work very well, right? The same thing is true within our bodies. Our internal systems are not going to function the way that they should, and we start to feel physically tired. Okay, so another example would be toxins. And toxins is another one where there's a whole chapter that I could talk about just on toxins, but let's look at some specific toxins that affect thyroid function. So those toxins are fluorine, chlorine, and bromine. So fluorine or fluoride is found in our water supply and in toothpaste. Chlorine, also found in the water supply, so it's stuff that we drink and that we bathe in, both. And then bromine is often added to commercial baked goods. So brominated flour is something to look out for. And the reason that those elements are bad is because the thyroid needs iodine to be able to create functioning T4 and T3. And that iodine is displaced by these elements, fluorine, chlorine, and bromine. So when that happens, that just means that our thyroid can't make properly functioning T4 and T3. And when that happens, then that T3 in particular is what regulates our metabolism, our temperature, and gives us energy. So if we're not able to make correct versions of those hormones, then all of those functions just are not working the way that they should. So those are some of the things that we'll assess when you come in for our first session. So if you have the voltage and nutrients necessary to make healthy, fully functioning new cells, and you don't have energy leaks draining away your voltage, then you're going to have a healthy body that's able to overcome disease, avoid pain, and stay healthy long term. So if this makes sense to you, resonates with you, and you feel that we're a good fit in that way, I'd like to personally invite you to schedule your new patient discovery session by using the buttons on the screen below.